Gears of War 5, Assassin's Creed Rogue, and Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered today on YemmyCast. Hey, what's up everybody? It's me, YemmytheFerret here with another episode of YemmyCast, a video game podcast on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for swinging on by for this weekend episode of the podcast. This weekend, I don't really have plans to go over any news-related things, but I do have plans to go over a few other things, as I've already stated in the past. But how are you guys doing today? Thank you so much for coming around. If this is your first time, or if this is your 50th time, I don't care. Thank you for coming around. Also, if you're here for the premiere at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, thank you so much. The podcast also comes out on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and the podcast is available on both days on all other platforms as well. So thank you for coming around to whichever one you choose. I'm finally getting over the sickness, just like Disturbed, and it was another one of those illnesses that just would not go away. But I'm glad that it's finally lighting up a little bit. Just a little bit of phlegm, Morty, a little bit of phlegm in the throat there. And I think we'll be okay by the time the next podcast comes out. But thank you for sticking with me and helping me fight through this sinus infection, and for a second time this year. The first time was more of a flu, so I can't really say sinus infection, but it still affected the sinuses a lot, and it was really, really bad. But that's welcome. Thank you for coming around. If you guys didn't know, one of my good friends, Fellow, aka a Retro Fellow, got Gears of War 5 for Wii from Microsoft, which is awesome. And I've been watching him play it here and there, and I gotta say that the game is looking really good. So I may actually be picking it up when it comes out on the computer. I don't have an Xbox One because I have a gaming PC, and Xbox puts all their games on PC anyways now, so it's like, what does it matter? But yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool of them to do. So look forward to talking about that game from my own personal experience in the near future. Fellow also put out a match 3 type game, kind of like Candy Crush. It's really awesome. I think it's called Fellow Fever. Yes, Fellow Fever. And if you go onto his Twitter, onto his Discord, or into the description below, you can find the link to download it and play it for yourself. It's very addicting. And hey, get a high score, mate. I got almost to gold rank the first time that I played it, but those match 3 games get really difficult once you get past that halfway point, because all of a sudden things just they're not lining up like you want them to anymore. And I think the game does that on purpose. But yeah, that's the intro for today. But yeah, cool game nonetheless. Go check it out. And like I said, I will be checking out Gears of War 5 with Baptista in available in multiplayer starting the first week or something like that. I think the 15th maybe. So yeah. What do you guys think? Gears of War 5, is it going to be worth it? I mean, the one thing going into it for me is since Gears of War 4 was such a letdown, I felt like it was very poorly constructed. The level design was just meh. I think the story was what brought it down the most for me. The new characters are all right, but they're none that I would point at and go, ooh, yay, yeah, that character's here. And you do see a lot of the same characters appear in Gears of War 5 from what I've seen so far. But I feel like the story and all the character development and the stuff like that is a little bit more well put together. I think the gameplay and stuff like that, the level design has been a little bit more thought through. So hopefully it's a better experience overall, and I'm looking forward to seeing it for myself. So yeah, like I said, Gears of War 4 was... I would probably put that on one of the worst games of the year it came out. Simply, I just did not enjoy it at all. They completely disregarded Carmine in that game. He was like a guy wearing like this Russian hat, and like he went up into a tower, and all of a sudden the tower blew up, and that was it. That was the Carmine death, and it's like that's not fair. I want to see old gruff Carmine. He was in Gears of War 3 and he lived through it, so why isn't he in 4? I don't know. Also, I feel like they just don't kill off enough characters in these games anymore. Like, they have this core set of characters that everyone loves, and they're like, well, we can't really kill off Marcus or Dom or... Well, not Dom. Dom. He did get killed off in 3. Or, like, Baird or Cole or any of, like, these characters who have been in the game for a while. But, like, Gears of War, I would say 2 and 3 had the most character deaths throughout the entire game. I mean, it was, like... When characters died, it was like, oh shit, that guy just died. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, he died. But Gears of War 4, I don't think there was any major characters who died in that one. And so far from 5, I can't see any that have died. And I was watching Fellow play a little bit of Act 3, I think it was, and there was still like the whole base group of characters there. So, we'll see when I actually play it. What I think about that kind of thing, because I think the Gears of War series has been good at like building up characters and having them be die or something like that mid game, but it seems like they haven't done that since like Gears of War 3, because Judgment had like no characters die, and so that's my thoughts on the Gears 5 gameplay I've seen and Gears of War 4. So. Yeah, whatever. Take that with what you will, okay? I'm not gonna tell you to like a game or not like a game. That is up to you. But me personally, Gears of War 4 was poopy. Gears of War 5 is looking alright. But let's get into the meat and bones of this podcast episode, because while I was sick, I ended up playing all the way through Assassin's Creed Rogue again. And I hadn't played all the way through Rogue since the PS3 days, which was probably about 5 years ago, I think that game came out. So I was a little hazy on the ending and stuff like that. And going through Rogue again with the remastered version in quotation marks, it was a good experience. I don't think it's like the experience with ship battling is not as good as Black Flag, because of course you're using pirates in Black Flag, and that just trumps anything else that you would see in any game. But I feel like Rogue is a better put together game story wise. I think the story in Rogue definitely trumps the story in Black Flag, and I think it's because it just everything lines up a little bit better with Rogue. Whereas Black Flag, you're killing your friends are trying to kill you, and Blackbeard's there, and you're trying to escape the British, and blah blah blah. Whereas in Rogue, it's like, okay, we are on the Templars now. The assassins are trying to get this relic that's holding the world together or something like that, and Khan or Shay, I should say Shay, sees firsthand the destruction that these ancient relics do. So he tries to warn the assassins, but the assassins are like, oh, fuck no. And he joins the Templars because the assassins pretty much shoot him in the back. And so you kind of start that journey with the Templars. And you go through it just trying to stop them, the assassins, from getting to the next site that has one of those devices in it. And the ship battling stuff in this game is good. I don't exactly like the fire barrels that you like. It's like an oil slick you put into the back of your ship instead of throwing the explosive barrels. It's cool looking, but I don't think it really does enough. All the other stuff on the ship is about the same, except for there's puckle guns on the Assassin's Creed Rogue ship. And I think the puckle guns are a lot more fun to use than the little swivel cannons that are on your Black Flag ship. Other than that, I do feel like the ship battling and stuff like that hits a little bit harder with Black Flag. I think Rogue, just the fact that you're a Templar and you have these soldiers practically on your ship manning the cannons and singing songs, it doesn't resonate as well as Black Flag does, and that's where Black Flag kind of takes the edge in the ship battling, the open world kind of stuff. Both games have trouble with their free running. Even though it's called Rogue Remastered, they did not update the free running to the new style of free running that they have in the newer games or even in Syndicate. And I feel like with these remasters, that's one thing they should really try to nail down is the free running. But it seems like they just don't do that. They just don't care, because Assassin's Creed Rogue Remastered really isn't a remaster. It's just a port. It should just have been called HD, HD port, something like that. Like, they improve little bits and things, like the water and the overall, like, environment has a little bit of better frame rate and stuff like that for the newer consoles. Other than that, it's literally the same game that you played back in the day. So when you look at Assassin's Creed Rogue Remaster, you go, okay, this isn't a remaster. It's just a basic port. There's really not much done to it. The free running still is a little bit janky here and there, but it's not as bad as it was in the past. Black Flag and Rogue are about the same in lines of free running. The combat is relatively similar to any other base Assassin's Creed game. It's basic blocking and breaking defense and slicing and dicing. And it doesn't feel as satisfying as the newer games, or even like, Unity had some really good stuff in it with the execution and stuff like that. But this one didn't really have anything new in terms of execution styles or anything like that. It's all just kind of copy-paste from Black Flag. Even like the dual-wielding swords type thing, it all is the same. So that's a little bit disappointing in terms of like, this is supposed to be the next game in the series, and it's just the same thing as Black Flag. They used the same engine, they used all the same mechanics, so it's, it makes sense, but they really did kind of shit this game out just because they were like, oh, well, the older consoles are still really popular, and Unity can only be put on the newer consoles, so let's just throw this game out. And really, they should have focused more on Rogue than they did with Unity. I feel like if they had put Rogue as the front runner and put that on the newer consoles and made it like beautiful like Unity, I feel like that Rogue could have really elevated the series, whereas Unity kind of brought it back down, and it just, there was so much wrong with Unity that who knows why it was even made or put out as early as it was in the first place, just to reach that deadline, of course, which hurt the game in the long run. So when you're looking at the Assassin's Creed series as a whole, I mean, obviously you're gonna go with Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations up first. But what's the next game you should play if you're playing through it chronologically? Because this is where it gets a little bit muddled. Assassin's Creed 3 takes place during the Revolutionary War, but technically it does not happen until after the events of Rogue, minus the end credits level. So you would play, I believe you would play Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, and then you go to Black Flag, and then Rogue, and then Assassin's Creed 3, and then Unity. It's very muddled up right there. I don't know why they decided to do it like that, but it's just kind of probably was just a way that it all worked out with how they were writing the series. But Assassin's Creed 3 is technically after Assassin's Creed Rogue, because what happens is, so Black Flag, you go through that game, Ad Wally becomes an assassin at the end of it, and he's gone. And he actually shows up in Rogue as an assassin commander. He's piloting his own ship, and Shay has to hunt him down. And during that game, you see Achilles when he was an assassin. You see all these characters from that show up in the beginning of Assassin's Creed 3, and they show up in this game. So there's the Scottish guy, and there's Edward Kenway, what's his name? Haytham Kenway. He's in there. I believe Charles Lee is in there as well, and of course Shay is there too. But he's not in Assassin's Creed 3. He's not even in Unity at all, even though they show him in Unity during Rogue. So the timeline definitely gets a little muddled up between these games, but that is the order that you want to play them in. I know that maybe you want to play the beginning of Assassin's Creed 3 and then stop once the big twist happens in Sequence 3, because that's where Rogue would pick up, because there's like a 10 to 15 years between the events that happened at the beginning of Assassin's Creed 3 in sequence up to 3, sequence 3, and then sequence 4. There's like a 15-year period where, Connor's growing up, and obviously this is when Shay and Haytham are doing their thing with Achilles, and they, at the end of Rogue, Haytham shoots Achilles in the leg to send a message, because Shay says, don't kill him, because then, people will take his place and continue his plot, but if he's still here, he can warn them about the dangers, and Haytham's like, fine. So after Rogue is completed, there's another, like, really big jump in the timeline, because you end up in France with Benjamin Franklin, when Benjamin Franklin is the ambassador to France, and at the end of that game, you kill Arno's father as Shay. But when you go back and play Unity, you don't even see, like, a silhouette of Shay. You don't even see anything like that, because I really wish they would have done something like that, because that would have been cool to kind of see, the two different worlds kind of colliding there. You play in a Shay, and you go past Arno and red-haired girl. I forget her name right now. You go past them talking about how they stole apples, and then you hunt down his dad, and while his dad is looking for Arno, you stab him in the back and talk to him, and then he falls over. And then that's of course where Unity would pick up, and you'd be on Arno's side, and you would see his dad on the ground. But it's not like you see Shay. It's not like Shay comes back in Unity and has a storyline or anything like that. And I really think if they were really playing this series out better, this would have been a better way to do it, is have Shay be one of the main villains of Unity. And then, I would have definitely waited to release Unity. I would have put Rogue on both systems right away, on the new generation, the old generation, right away. And I would have put my efforts into that one and kept Unity on the back burner until the next time around. No, it doesn't have ship battling, doesn't have anything like that. Same thing with Syndicate. But those ones will take people back to an older version of Assassin's Creed that a lot of people started with, like with Assassin's Creed 2, 1, Brotherhood, etc. But instead, we are greeted with the most amazing ship battling 2 games in a row, and then we got Unity, which was a complete letdown. But yeah, it's very complicated. Just especially when you're playing through it in the order that they came out, things can get a little bit sideways. But going back to the point, Rogue is a decent game. It's really good. If you haven't played it yet, I would definitely suggest playing it. It's the remastered version's fine, and if you want to play it on the older consoles, I'm sure it's really cheap to do that. And I think it's backwards compatible with the Xbox 360 or Xbox One, so you don't even have to buy the newer version to play Assassin's Creed Rogue. But that brings me to Assassin's Creed 3 and its remaster, because I've been playing it here and there, and I've just not been enjoying the game at all. And I think I didn't really like it back when I played it originally on the PlayStation 3. But at least back then, like, the graphics were all right, and everything looked a lot better than the remaster, to be honest with you. There was this way that the graphics looked back in the day. With Assassin's Creed 2 all the way up to 3, the graphics just looked fine. Even for this day and age standards, they still look fine. But when you go through the Ezio Trilogy Remastered, you see some odd things happening with the facial stuff and with the rendering of some people. And that is tripled in Assassin's Creed 3 Remaster, which is supposedly a from-the-ground-up remaster. Essentially what they did is they took all the character models and they tried to update them to the new style that they look now in Origins and Odyssey. But it doesn't look right at all. Essentially, they look like Play-Doh or clay figures. Whereas in like Odyssey and Origins, everything looks pretty good. It looks really good. But Assassin's Creed 3, for some reason, I don't know what they did. Everything looks like clay with like plastic hair, and the clothing looks like plastic, and feet are clipping through clothes. I've had parts of the game just the characters disappear, and it's just their clothing, or it's nothing at all. There's that one part where Haytham is looking at that necklace that he got during like the first mission, in the game. And it's just the necklace moving around, and he's looking at it, but you can't see Haytham because, you know, he's not there. He's just not there. And this is the kind of shady shit that Ubisoft is known for. And really, I hadn't really experienced that until the Assassin's Creed 3 remaster. Yeah, it was in Unity a little bit, but I didn't get like those major glitches like a lot of people did. But it still doesn't show good for their company to have this game, Assassin's Creed 3 remaster, come out, and it's more of a demaster than anything else. There's just so much wrong with the game now. And having such terrible looking people and graphics and stuff like that just adds on to the fact that the game really isn't that interesting. Connor isn't really that interesting of a character, and the story isn't really that interesting. But you think it would be, since, oh, it's the Revolutionary War, this is our history, this is the U.S.'s history. But the game is just so lackluster and boring, it's like, well, how do I get into this? How do I relate to a character like Connor or Achilles or Haytham Kenway or any of these characters where when the dialogue and the story just falls apart as it goes along, and with the on top of it is these really terrible character models, really awful hair, stuff that just takes you out of the game so much. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through it. Like, the only part of the game where I'm really having a good time is the ship stuff, and that's a very small part of the game. And I think that was the same way that it was in the back in the day with Assassin's Creed 3, is the fact that the ship stuff was really cool, which is why they put an emphasis on it in Black Flag, which was the next game in the series. Now, Assassin's Creed 3, I have not played through the whole game since back when it first came out, and I've forgotten pretty much the whole thing. And even while I'm playing through the game now, I'm not remembering these scenes in the game. I think I think the one thing is it wasn't very memorable, but the other thing is that the graphics look so different that the game doesn't feel familiar to me. I remember playing through like those first few missions as Haytham, and then there's the big twist, and that was really cool. But the game just looks so different, and it's not in a good way. If it was in a good way, then I would be remembering these things, but now like these are new memories. But the way that it is now, the game is just like, it's just complete crap. Like, there's no saving qualities to this game right now, and I'm having a really hard time. I'm struggling to get through it right now. The first 5 sequences in the game are so hand-holding, and they restrict you so much that you really can't deviate from the path. There's no side missions to do. There's no side quests. I mean, sure, you can pick up some almanac pages here and there, and yeah, you can synchronize some points, there's way too many synchronization points, let me just tell you that much. But the main core of the game does not start until after sequence 5. After you get the ship stuff unlocked and you can kind of roam around where you want to. Even after that, though, it's still better to stay along the main story's path, because that'll take you to new cities, it'll take you to new places, and when you get to these new places, yeah, there's the synchronization points, yeah, there's the almanac pages, there's some collectible here and there, but for the most part, there's really nothing to do in these cities. You can run around and fight British soldiers, but what else am I going to do? There's hardly any side missions, there's hardly anything else to do, besides from getting people for your settlement, and helping rebuild the homestead for Achilles, and doing the main missions. It's just a very lacking game, and now in this day and age, the fact that they put such a terrible remaster out there, kind of putting the nail in the coffin for Assassin's Creed 3. I think Assassin's Creed 3 is now pretty widely known as the worst Assassin's Creed game in the series. And that says a lot, because Assassin's Creed Unity used to be my worst favorite, but now that I'm going through Assassin's Creed 3 again, I'm just seeing much worse problems with this game. And it really sucks, because the original trilogy that would have been Assassin's Creed 1, 2, and 3 is completely derailed by this game. And also, they kill off their main character in this game, Desmond. Should not have been killed off. I know we've gone through a lot of games with him, but to be honest with you, he was a focal point of these games. The side characters, who cares about them? Desmond was the character people were relating to, and Desmond was the character that we were experiencing this all with. The one thing that I don't understand is this Juno character in Assassin's Creed 3. She is everywhere in this game. And her model in Assassin's Creed 3 is terrible. Awful. The worst model in the game. I don't know. It's very, very stupid. And the whole thing between him and his dad, the whole, like, thing there, it's just so dumb how the dialogue goes. Like, Desmond brings up a good point. You know, I'm not the only one who has to do this. You have the genes too. You could do this. And he's like, oh, don't be silly, you idiot. This is exactly like you back in the day, you know, not taking responsibility. It's like, it's really not his sole responsibility if there's more people in the bloodline. You know, his dad could easily get into an animus and play through, you know, Connor's memories while he's playing through Ezio's memories. Why wouldn't he do that? Because it's the plot. It's not the plot. Yeah, Assassin's Creed 3, I mean, this isn't a meme, but I'd definitely be giving it like a 3 out of 10 or something like that. If I'm going by 5, I'd probably give it like a 1 out of 5. It's going nowhere for me right now, and it's really just hurting me on the inside to try and play through this game. I put Odyssey on the back burner because I wanted to play Rogue again. And after playing Rogue, I was like, yeah, it has some, you know, hiccups here and there, but overall, it's a good game. And I was like, oh, I might as well play through Assassin's Creed 3 again, because technically it takes place after this one. And I haven't really, you know, I haven't seen the remaster at all. And just going through the game again, remembering the big highlight moments of 3, like the part where you climb to the top of the ship while you're going into port at Boston. And you're looking over the fog, and it looks amazing. Moments like that just don't look anything like the original, and they look worse. And it's such a letdown. It is such a letdown, because I'm expecting like this big build-up, and you go up there on top, and you look across, and you see the sun gleaming over the fog, and there's fog all over, and you see the city in the background. And it just looks like a playset. Whereas in Assassin's Creed 3, it actually had depth. It actually looked really good. I don't know. I don't know anymore. I don't know. So Assassin's Creed 3, if you have not played that game yet, is it worth it to play through? For the story, if you're invested in the story, yeah, you got to play through it for the story. You know, you got to see what happens to Desmond, because once Assassin's Creed 3 is done, 4 starts up and you play as a random person in Abstergo, and you're trying to find the what's his name, Black Bart or whatever his name was in the past, and he's like one of those guys who kind of gets reborn every time he dies. And then Rogue, you know, you're a Templar in Abstergo, and you're trying to fix what the assassins did in Black Flag. And then Assassin's Creed Unity comes around, and you're a random person just playing the game at home on like a home console that Abstergo made. So Desmond just does not come back up during most of those, except in like little tiny snippets. So if you really want to see what happens to Desmond, you got to play Assassin's Creed 3. If you're not interested in the story and just like the gameplay, skip 3. I'm going to say it right now. Skip 3, because it does not add anything to combat, free running, ship battling, nada. It doesn't add anything to that. Just skip over and go to 4 if you want better gameplay, if you want to continue the line of gameplay. And that's my advice to you, those who have not played all the way through the Assassin's Creed series yet. And I know it's hard to believe to people who have played through it, but you know, there's new gamers every day now, and they're going to be wanting to go through these games again, and really the only way to go through these games again, if you don't have an older console, is through these ports. Assassin's Creed 1, who knows why that has still been in limbo with the remaster or HD remake or something like that, because it has not been redone since Revelations, and it was a free game added with Revelations to give people incentive to buy the game. And plus, Revelations really connected with Assassin's Creed 1 a lot more than Brotherhood and 2. So it made more sense, but it really has not gotten any treatment since then. So if you're looking to play through the whole series again, you literally cannot play the first game at this point if you don't have an older console. You can play through the Ezio trilogy, you can play through 3 now, 4, Rogue, Unity Syndicate, Odyssey Origins, it's all there. It's just these little snippet. Like the first game for some reason just is lost. It's not gotten anything done to it, which is very strange. Oh, I almost forgot. Freedom Cry is after Black Flag, and Liberation is, I think it's after. Technically, it takes place after 3 or Black Flag. I can't remember exactly though. I think it's during Freedom Cry, actually, to be honest with you. I don't remember though. Maybe I'm probably wrong about that. I think it is after Assassin's Creed 3 technically. I just talked myself out of all this stuff, all this information I gave you. I just decredited myself right there. Anyways, that's all I gotta say for this episode of YemmyCast, the video game podcast. Thank you so much for coming around and listening to me rant and ramble about Assassin's Creed. It is one of those series that I really love. There's a few main series that I grew up with: Mass Effect, Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, and Gears of War. And Assassin's Creed, I'm still invested in. Call of Duty, I'm still invested in. Mass Effect, I'm out. Gears of War, I was out at 4, but I might get back into. Medal of Honor, of course, out. After Warfighter, it was done. So, we'll see what happens in the future with these games. Hopefully the next Assassin's Creed game gets announced soon, because I am interested to see where they're going to go with this series next. I have thoughts on Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but I don't want to take the time to and extend this podcast to an hour long. So we're just going to end it here. I'll talk about Odyssey once I get close to being finished with it. The one thing that's really bugging me about Odyssey is there's really no structure to the game after you get past the part where you find out that there's a secret order trying to, do whatever. And after that, you kind of just hunt down them and do like basic stuff, main missions that really don't pertain to it right now. So I'm really hoping that it starts to pick up again, because I am kind of losing interest in it, kind of like I did with Origins, where it was kind of on a straight and narrow path, and you zoom out and the world is so big. It's like, well, how is this story going to end? How is it going to end? That's it. Still good games, and I still want to play through both of them, but kind of stalling out on Odyssey right now. Anyways, thank you so much for coming around to this episode. I'm YemmytheFerret, and this has been YemmyCast, a video game podcast.